Golden Age Hollywood was filled with stars who vanished without a trace, and deaths so mysterious they still haunt us today. But number 3 on this list is the most chilling disappearance I've ever encountered. Behind the studio gates and glamorous premieres, some of Hollywood's brightest lights were extinguished in ways that defied explanation. These weren't just tragic accidents or natural deaths. These were puzzling vanishings and sinister endings that left investigators baffled for decades. From stars who walked off sets never to return, to deaths with evidence that simply didn't add up, these cases reveal the dark underbelly of Hollywood's golden era. 1. John Spangler. The 26-year-old actress vanished on October 7, 1949, leaving behind one of Hollywood's most baffling disappearances that involved mysterious phone calls, cryptic notes, and connections to organized crime. Spangler told her sister-in-law she was meeting her ex-husband about child support payments, then going to work on a night shoot, but no studio had any record of filming that evening. Her purse was found in Griffith Park 2 days later with a strange, unfinished note that read, "Kirk, can't wait any longer. Going to see Dr. Scott. It will work best this way while Mother is away." No one could identify who Kirk was, though Kirk Douglas came forward to clear his name, and no Dr. Scott was ever found. The investigation uncovered disturbing connections that police couldn't fully explore. Spangler had been seen at various Hollywood nightclubs with David Ogle, an associate of Mickey Cohen's crime syndicate, just days before her disappearance. Friends revealed she'd been 3 months pregnant, but wouldn't name the father, leading investigators to suspect she'd sought an illegal procedure that went wrong. Even more chilling, witnesses reported seeing Spangler get into a car with 2 men on the night she vanished, but their identities were never discovered. The case took a sinister turn when investigators learned Spangler had been planning to fly to El Paso, where many Hollywood women went for certain medical procedures. Her daughter waited for a mother who never came home, and 70 years later, Jean Spangler's fate remains unknown. 2. Dorothy Kilgallen. The celebrated journalist and What's My Line. Panelists died under circumstances so suspicious that conspiracy theories persist to this day. On November 8, 1965, Kilgallen was found dead in her Manhattan townhouse, supposedly from an overdose of alcohol and barbiturates, but nothing about the scene made sense. She was in a bedroom she never used, wearing clothes she wouldn't sleep in, with her reading glasses missing, though a book lay beside her. Most disturbingly, her hairdresser found her hours before police were called. Yet he was told to continue preparing for her scheduled appearance and say nothing. Kilgallen had been investigating the Kennedy assassination and claimed she was about to blow the case wide open. She'd conducted the only interview with Jack Ruby and told friends she had information that would rewrite history. Her research files, including her Ruby interview notes, vanished from her home the night she died. The medical examiner found she'd ingested 3 different barbiturates, a combination no single doctor would prescribe, yet no pill bottles were found. Friends reported she'd received death threats and was terrified in her final weeks, even hiring a bodyguard. The official ruling of accidental overdose satisfied no one who knew her, especially when it emerged that her final column, submitted the day she died, referenced breaking news that wouldn't happen until after her death. 3. Thelma Todd. The ice cream blonde comedienne's death on December 16, 1935, remains the most chilling and mysterious case in Hollywood history, with evidence pointing to murder that was deliberately covered up. Todd was found dead in her car in a garage near her restaurant, supposedly from carbon monoxide poisoning. But the physical evidence made suicide or accident impossible. Her body showed signs of violence, broken ribs, bruised throat, and blood on her face that someone had tried to clean. Most disturbing, her shoes were clean despite the official story claiming she'd walked up a flight of outdoor stairs in the rain and mud. The car's engine was off when found, with barely any carbon monoxide in her blood, and witnesses saw her at a party 2 days after she supposedly died. The investigation revealed terrifying connections that authorities refused to pursue. Todd had been receiving death threats from Lucky Luciano's mob syndicate after refusing to let them use her restaurant's upper floor for illegal gambling. Her business partner, Roland West, with whom she'd been having an affair, gave contradictory statements about that night, first claiming he'd locked her out, then denying it. Even more sinister, Todd's ex-husband, Pat DiCicco, connected to the mob, had been seen arguing violently with her days before. The grand jury wanted to investigate murder, but was mysteriously dissolved after one day. Witnesses began disappearing or changing their stories, and the district attorney suddenly closed the case. Studio head Hal Roach, who had his own mob connections, pushed for the suicide verdict despite Todd having signed a new lucrative contract days before her death. 4. Thomas Ince. The pioneering filmmaker's death aboard William Randolph Hearst's yacht in 1924 was Hollywood's first major cover-up, with witnesses paid or threatened into silence for decades. The official story claimed Ince died of heart failure, but rumors persisted that Hearst had shot him in a jealous rage. Witnesses on the yacht gave wildly different accounts. Some claimed Ince was never aboard, others said he left early, while workers at the dock reported seeing a body being removed. Charlie Chaplin, who was on the yacht, never spoke publicly about that night, but his secretary revealed years later that Hearst had actually been aiming for Chaplin, believing he was having an affair with Marion Davies, and hit Ince by mistake. The cover-up was swift and thorough. Ince's body was cremated immediately without an autopsy, despite California law requiring one for sudden deaths. Hearst newspapers ran identical stories about Ince's illness, though he'd been perfectly healthy days before. Every guest on the yacht received mysterious career boost. Luella Parsons got her gossip column, Davies received starring roles, and others found sudden success. A doctor who wasn't on the yacht signed the death certificate, and Ince's widow received a trust fund that paid her for life, conditional on never discussing his death. Decades later, a diary surfaced from a yacht crew member describing blood on the deck and hearing a gunshot, but by then, everyone involved was dead. 5. George Reeves. The man who embodied Superman met a controversial end on June 16, 1959, that defied the official suicide ruling and pointed to murder. Reeves was found shot in his Beverly Hills bedroom while guests partied downstairs. But the crime scene evidence made suicide nearly impossible. The bullet casing was found under his body, which couldn't happen if he'd shot himself, and there were additional bullet holes in the floor that police couldn't explain. No fingerprints were found on the gun, not even Reeves's own, and no powder burns appeared on his head wound despite the supposed point-blank range. Most damning, witnesses downstairs heard a shot, then heard footsteps, drawers opening, and a second shot 45 minutes later. Yet police insisted on a single self-inflicted wound. The investigation revealed dangerous connections that authorities refused to pursue. Reeves had been having an affair with Toni Mannix, wife of MGM fixer Eddie Mannix, known for making problems disappear permanently. When Reeves ended the affair to marry Lenore Lemon, Toni began stalking him, and Eddie had reportedly put out a contract on Reeves. On the night of his death, Lemon's behavior was bizarre. She allegedly predicted Reeves would shoot himself moments before it happened, then waited 45 minutes to call police. She also had bruises on her face from a fight with Reeves earlier that evening. Years later, a friend of the Mannix family claimed Eddie had confessed to ordering the hit, saying Reeves had to be removed. The case was never reopened despite multiple witnesses coming forward with new information. 6. Virginia Rappe. The actress whose death at Fatty Arbuckle's party became a scandal actually had mysterious circumstances that went far beyond what the public ever learned. On September 5, 1921, Rapp attended Arbuckle's Labor Day party and died 4 days later from a ruptured bladder, but witnesses gave wildly contradictory accounts of what happened in that hotel room. The prosecution's star witness, Maud Delmont, who claimed Arbuckle assaulted Rapp, had a history of blackmail and extortion, and her story changed dramatically each time she told it. Most suspiciously, Delmont was never called to testify at any of Arbuckle's 3 trials because prosecutors knew she'd been trying to set him up for blackmail. What investigators discovered but never revealed publicly was that Rapp had suffered from chronic cystitis and had undergone multiple botched procedures in the days before the party. Her personal physician, who mysteriously left town during the investigation, had been treating her with dangerous methods that likely caused her bladder problems. Even more disturbing, several party guests reported seeing a man named Henry Bobbitt leave Arbuckle's suite shortly before Rapp's screams were heard, but he vanished and was never questioned. Documents found decades later revealed that William Randolph Hearst had orchestrated much of the scandal, paying witnesses to testify against Arbuckle because the comedian had insulted Marion Davies. Rapp's manager also admitted years later that he'd been promised career advancement if he supported the assault story. 7. Bobby Driscoll. Disney's first male child star vanished from Hollywood so completely that his body lay unidentified in a pauper's grave for over a year. Driscoll, who voiced Peter Pan and won an Academy Award at age 12, was dropped by Disney when he hit puberty and developed severe acne. By 1968, he disappeared entirely from public view, and his own mother didn't know where he was. On March 30, 1968, 2 boys found a body in an abandoned tenement in New York's East Village. But with no identification and no missing person report, the corpse was buried in Potter's Field as a John Doe. It wasn't until 1969, when Driscoll's mother finally tried to find him for his father's funeral, that fingerprints revealed the truth. Hollywood's forgotten child star had been dead for over a year. The circumstances of Driscoll's final years revealed Hollywood's darkest treatment of child stars. After Disney terminated his contract, other studios blacklisted him on Walt Disney's personal recommendation, effectively ending his career at 17. Friends from his final years in New York described a man destroyed by Hollywood's rejection, living in abandoned buildings and creating art that depicted his fall from grace. Most disturbingly, several witnesses claimed they'd seen Driscoll at the infamous factory scene with Andy Warhol's crowd just days before his death, suggesting he'd been involved with dangerous individuals. The official cause of death was heart failure from advanced hardening of the arteries, unusual for a 31-year-old, leading to speculation about what substances or trauma might have caused such damage. His unmarked grave's location was lost when Hart Island's burial records were destroyed, meaning Peter Pan's voice would never have a proper resting place. 8. Peg Entwistle. The actress who became famous for jumping from the Hollywood sign actually left behind mysteries that suggested her death might not have been what it seemed. On September 18, 1932, Entwistle's body was found in a ravine below the Hollywoodland sign, apparently having jumped from the letter H. Her suicide note read simply, "I am afraid, I am a coward. I am sorry for everything," but investigators found troubling inconsistencies. Her body showed injuries inconsistent with the fall distance, including defensive wounds on her hands and arms that predated her death. Witnesses reported seeing 2 men near the sign that night, and Entwistle's uncle revealed she'd been receiving threatening letters from someone connected to her last theatrical role. More disturbing evidence emerged decades later when a photographer's estate revealed pictures taken near the sign that night showing what appeared to be multiple figures on the hillside. Entwistle had just been offered a role in a film, contradicting the narrative of a desperate actress ending her life. Her ex-husband, actor Robert Keith, behaved strangely after her death, immediately leaving Los Angeles and refusing to discuss her ever again. His son, Brian Keith, later revealed his father had hidden documents about Peg that he destroyed before his own death. A gardener working in the Hollywood Hills claimed he'd heard screaming and sounds of a struggle that night, but was paid to forget what he'd heard. 9. Barbara Lamar. The girl who was too beautiful to live died at 29, under circumstances that MGM desperately covered up for decades. On January 30th, 1926, Lamar died supposedly from tuberculosis and exhaustion, but the truth involved Hollywood's first major overdose cover-up. Lamar had been consuming massive amounts of diet pills prescribed by studio doctors to maintain her figure, combined with other substances to keep her working 18-hour days. When she collapsed on set for the final time, witnesses reported she was delirious and speaking about the men in the walls watching her. MGM rushed her to a private sanitarium where she died days later, but the official cause of death conveniently omitted any mention of the cocktail of substances in her system. The cover-up went deeper than anyone suspected. Lamar's personal diary, discovered in MGM's vaults in the 1980s, revealed she'd been investigating strange occurrences at the studio involving young actresses disappearing from parties. She wrote about being followed and receiving warnings to stop asking questions. Her final diary entry, dated 3 days before her death, mentioned having evidence she'd hidden where only the angels look. Her home was thoroughly searched after her death, with MGM executives removing boxes of papers. Even more mysteriously, Lamar's adopted son claimed years later that men identifying themselves as federal agents visited him throughout his childhood, asking if his mother had left him anything. The sanitarium where she died burned down 2 weeks after her death, destroying all medical records. 10. Olive Thomas. The original Ziegfeld girl's death in Paris on September 10, 1920, was ruled accidental poisoning, but evidence suggested something far more sinister. Thomas and her husband, Jack Pickford, were at the Ritz Hotel when she allegedly drank mercury bichloride, thinking it was sleeping medication. But witnesses at the hotel reported hearing violent arguments and furniture breaking in their suite that night. The bottle she supposedly drank from was labeled clearly with skull and crossbones, making an accident nearly impossible in a well-lit room. Most suspiciously, Pickford's behavior after her death was bizarre. He immediately had her body embalmed before an autopsy could be performed and paid enormous sums to expedite her return to America. The investigation revealed connections to international drug trafficking that authorities quickly abandoned. Thomas had discovered her husband was not only addicted to various substances, but was involved in smuggling operations between Paris and New York. She'd threatened divorce and exposure just days before her death. A hotel maid later testified she'd seen a third person leave the Pickford suite that night, but she was fired and deported before she could identify them. Even more disturbing, Thomas's sister received anonymous payments for 20 years after the death, sent from different European cities. French police files, opened decades later, revealed they'd been pressured by American officials to close the case quickly. Pickford himself died at 36 from substance-related complications, but not before confessing to friends that Olive knew too much about too many people. 11. Lou Tellegen. The matinee idol's death on October 29, 1934, was ruled self-inflicted, but the scene suggested something far more complex and sinister. Tellegen was found in his bathroom with scissors plunged into his chest, having supposedly stabbed himself 7 times in the heart, a medical impossibility that the coroner couldn't explain. His body showed defensive wounds on his hands and arms, and the bathroom door had been locked from the outside, then broken down by someone who left before police arrived. Most bizarrely, Thelma had written "help" in his own blood on the bathroom mirror. Hardly the act of someone taking their own life. Neighbors reported hearing multiple voices arguing in his apartment that night, but only Thelma's body was found. The investigation uncovered connections to Hollywood's occult underground that police refused to pursue. Thelma had been involved with a secretive group that met at the home of a prominent director, and he'd recently tried to leave after witnessing something that terrified him. Friends reported he'd been paranoid for weeks, claiming they were watching him and that he had information that could destroy powerful people. His personal papers, including a manuscript he'd been writing about Hollywood's dark secrets, vanished from his apartment. Even more disturbing, 3 other members of the same occult group died under mysterious circumstances within 6 months of Thelma's death. The police quickly closed the case despite the physical impossibilities, and the coroner who questioned the suicide ruling was suddenly transferred out of state. 12. Thelma Todd's business partner Roland West. While Todd's death remains Hollywood's greatest mystery, West's own demise 7 years later contained disturbing parallels that suggested both deaths were connected. West died on March 31, 1942, supposedly from natural causes, but friends reported he'd been receiving threatening phone calls warning him to keep quiet about Todd in the weeks before his death. His housekeeper found him dead in the same chair where he'd often spoken about Todd, with a glass of wine that tested positive for a paralytic substance. Most chillingly, West had recently told friends he was finally ready to reveal what really happened the night Todd died, having scheduled a meeting with a journalist for the day after his death. West's papers revealed he'd been keeping detailed records about Todd's death, including names of people who'd threatened her and evidence of mob involvement he'd hidden for years. These documents disappeared from his home the night he died, though his safe showed no signs of forced entry. The undertaker later reported that West's body showed signs of suffocation, not heart failure, as officially stated. Even more mysterious, West's death occurred exactly 7 years, 3 months, and 15 days after Todd's, numbers that held significance in the numerology practices of the Hollywood occult circle both had been associated with. His funeral was attended by known mob figures who'd never publicly associated with him, and his estate was settled with unusual speed, with beneficiaries receiving payments to remain silent about his final days. 13. Marie Prevost. The silent film star's death on January 21, 1937, revealed one of Hollywood's most disturbing cover-ups about the treatment of aging actresses. Prevost was found dead in her apartment, having been deceased for several days, with initial reports sensationalizing false details about her pet dachshund. But the real circumstances pointed to deliberate neglect and isolation by the studio system. Prevost had been calling friends for days before her death, saying she was being watched and that someone had been entering her apartment while she was sleeping. Her neighbors reported seeing men in suits removing boxes from her apartment the day before her body was officially discovered. Most mysteriously, Prevost's bank account had been emptied through forged checks in the week before her death, though she was reportedly bedridden. The investigation uncovered evidence that Prevost had been compiling information about the studio's systematic destruction of actresses over 30. Her personal papers, discovered hidden in a wall during renovations decades later, contained lists of actresses who died under suspicious circumstances and financial records showing studios had been stealing from their contracted stars. She'd scheduled a meeting with a labor attorney for the day after she died. The coroner found she'd ingested a paralytic substance that would have rendered her helpless for days before her death, contradicting the official verdict of heart failure. Even more disturbing, 3 other actresses who'd been collaborating with Prevost on exposing studio practices died within the following year, all from supposed natural causes despite being under 40. 14. Aleta Friel. The actress's death on December 17, 1935, just one day after Thelma Todd's funeral, contained parallels too disturbing to be coincidental. Friel supposedly shot herself in her Manhattan apartment, but she'd left a cryptic note saying, "Now Thelma knows the truth." Police found evidence that Friel had been investigating Todd's death independently, keeping detailed notes about inconsistencies in the official story. Her apartment showed signs of a struggle, with furniture overturned and papers scattered, yet authorities insisted she was alone when she died. Most inexplicably, Friel had booked passage on a ship to Europe, leaving the next day, hardly the action of someone planning to end their life. Friends revealed Friel had claimed to know who killed Todd and had evidence hidden in a safety deposit box. But when police checked, the box had been emptied the morning of her death using a key that was still in her apartment. The building's doorman, who initially reported seeing two men leave Friel's apartment that night, suddenly changed his story and moved to Florida within a week. Friel's sister received anonymous monthly payments for the rest of her life, with the only condition being that she never discuss Aleda's death publicly. Even more chilling, phone records showed Friel had received 17 calls from Thelma Todd's restaurant on the day Todd's body was discovered, though the restaurant was supposedly closed and sealed by police. 15. William Desmond Taylor. The renowned director's murder on February 1, 1922, remains unsolved because the crime scene was contaminated by studio executives before police arrived. Taylor was found shot in his Westlake bungalow, but by the time detectives got there, Paramount executives had been ransacking the place for hours, removing papers and unknown items. Witnesses saw a person dressed as a man, but walking like a woman, leaving Taylor's home the night of the murder, but this individual was never identified. Even more bizarre, Taylor's valet had disappeared days before the murder and was later discovered to have been using multiple false identities. The investigation revealed Taylor himself was living under an assumed name, having abandoned a wife and daughter in New York years earlier. What made the case truly chilling were the connections that authorities refused to investigate. Actress Mary Miles Minner's mother, Charlotte Shelby, owned a gun that matched the murder weapon, and she'd threatened Taylor after discovering his relationship with her teenage daughter. Shelby had allegedly paid off prosecutors to drop the investigation. Taylor's neighbor, Faith McLean, reported hearing a gunshot and seeing someone she recognized leaving the scene, but she died mysteriously before she could testify. Even more disturbing, Taylor had been investigating drug trafficking in Hollywood and had compiled evidence against major suppliers. His documents vanished that night, and 3 people he'd named as witnesses died within 6 months of his murder. The case files were sealed for 50 years, and when finally opened, crucial evidence and witness statements had been removed. 16. Paul Byrne. While officially ruled self-inflicted, MGM executive Paul Byrne's death 2 months after marrying Jean Harlow contained evidence of murder that the studio buried. On September 5, 1932, Byrne was found shot in his bedroom, but the scene defied logic. The gun was in his right hand, though he was left-handed, and there were 2 glasses of wine poured through Harlow was away. Most damning, servants reported hearing voices and a car leaving the property around midnight, hours after Byrne supposedly died. The suicide note found at the scene was later proven by handwriting experts to be a forgery, likely written by someone at MGM. Even more suspicious, Byrne's butler disappeared that night and was never seen again, though he'd worked for Byrne for years. The cover-up involved Hollywood's most powerful figures working to protect multiple secrets. Irving Thalberg and Louis B. Mayer arrived at the scene before police, removing documents and staging evidence. They created the narrative about Byrne's physical inadequacy to explain the suicide, but friends knew this was false. What MGM really hid was that Byrne had been gathering evidence about financial fraud within the studio and was planning to go to federal authorities. His secretary, who could have verified his appointments that day, died in a car accident a week later. Most chillingly, Burns' first wife, Dorothy Millette, who supposedly drowned herself in grief days after his death, had actually been at his house that night, according to taxi records that MGM tried to destroy. 17. Carol Landis. The blonde bombshell's death on July 5, 1948, was ruled suicide, but evidence pointed to a carefully orchestrated murder involving Hollywood's most powerful men. Landis was found dead in her bathroom with a bottle of Seconal nearby, and I supposedly devastated over Rex Harrison's refusal to leave his wife. But the scene contained disturbing inconsistencies. She'd been dead for hours when Harrison discovered her, though he claimed to have just arrived. The suicide note was typed, though Landis always wrote personal notes by hand, and forensics later proved it was written on a different typewriter than the one in her home. Most damning, Landis had told friends she had information that could destroy Harrison's career and was planning to meet with reporters the next day. The cover-up revealed Hollywood's machinery protecting British stars at any cost. Harrison had actually been at the house all night, according to neighbors who saw his car, but were paid to change their testimony. Landis's maid found evidence of a struggle, overturned furniture and blood spots that were cleaned before police arrived. She was fired and deported to Mexico within days. Even more sinister, Landis had been pregnant, a fact hidden from the official report, but revealed by her personal physician years later. 3 of Landis's closest friends who questioned the suicide story died within 18 months, 1 in a car accident, 1 from sudden illness, and 1 from an unexplained fall. Harrison fled to England immediately after the inquest and never returned to discuss the case. Studio executives at 20th Century Fox destroyed Landis's personal effects, including diaries that reportedly contained explosive revelations about powerful men in Hollywood. 18. John Gilbert. The silent film legend's death on January 9, 1936, supposedly from a heart attack at 36, contained medical impossibilities that suggested deliberate poisoning. Gilbert had been healthy just days before, completing a physical for an insurance policy, yet suddenly collapsed at home after drinking wine sent as a gift from an anonymous admirer. The autopsy revealed massive organ failure consistent with poisoning, but this finding was changed to natural causes in the official report. Gilbert's personal physician refused to sign the death certificate and left Los Angeles immediately after. Most mysteriously, Gilbert had been writing a tell-all book about Louis B. Mayer's criminal connections and the systematic destruction of actors who opposed the studio system. The final manuscript vanished from Gilbert's home the night he died, along with boxes of documents he'd been compiling for years. His secretary, who knew the contents of the book, died in a suspicious drowning accident 2 weeks later. Gilbert's nurse reported that men identifying themselves as doctors had visited him the day before his death, administering an injection they claimed was vitamins. She was committed to a psychiatric institution shortly after making this statement. Even more chilling, Gilbert had predicted his own death, telling Marlene Dietrich that, "They'll never let the book see daylight, even if they have to silence me permanently." The wine bottle that allegedly caused his death was never tested and disappeared from evidence. 3 other actors who'd been collaborating with Gilbert on exposing studio corruption died within the year, all from sudden heart failure despite being under 40. These golden age Hollywood mysteries remind us that beneath the glamour and spotlights, darkness lurked in every shadow. From Thelma Todd's impossible crime scene to mysterious disappearances that remain unsolved 8 decades later, these cases prove that powerful forces in Hollywood could make anyone vanish or die when they knew too much. The studio system didn't just control careers, it controlled life and death itself. Which mysterious death shocked you the most? Let us know in the comments below.